Yeah. Okay, and then let's start. Okay, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Joy Crump today, a culinary graduate of the Art Institute of Atlanta. Crump began her home-based business Foodie in 2009. By 2011, she partnered with Beth Black, transitioning Foodie to a brick and mortar store in historic downtown Fredericksburg, Virginia. In 2014, the duo opened their second restaurant, Mercantile, also in Fredericksburg. And in May of 2017, they added the microbrewery Six Bears and a Goat to their restaurant group. Crump is an executive chef, restaurateur, and property owner with over 15 years experience in culinary industry training and management. Crump has had the honor of appearing as a chef testant on the Emmy Award-winning Top Chef, cooking at the James Beard House in both 2016 and 2017. And she is actively involved in the James Beard Foundation's impact programs for food policy, chef advocacy, and change. Welcome to our course, Joy.
Well, thank you. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity today to speak to everyone here. I know we're all busy, so it's wonderful that you guys carved out some time to be here. And this is not something I do all the time, so kind of forgive me if the format is a little bit loose around the edges, but I'm pleased to have been offered this opportunity, and I'm really intrigued by the course, by the scope that it's trying to cover, and by the way that it chooses food as an intersection for so many things, not just here, obviously where we are, but all over the world. I think that's an ambitious undertaking, and I'm always thrilled to see when that sort of takes place in academia. And it's ambitious, and I also love how much this course involves writing in these lessons. I think there's something very careful and thoughtful and kind and kind of inherently painstaking about writing. And the same thing can be said about food and working with food. It takes time. And when you're finished, hopefully you've developed something that can be shared and appreciated. Look, there's a lot of really solid chefs in the industry today. A lot of people who cook well and maybe who cook for a living and who have stories to tell with their food. And I'm just one of them. So you heard my little bio at the beginning. Obviously, that's not the full story of who I am. Um, I'm actually at a really cool juncture, I think, kind of like a tipping point in the story of my life, if you will. I'm 57 years old, and I'll be 58 years old in a couple of weeks. Hey, Joy. Um, but I definitely have some traction already behind me, right? Like, so that's 58 years. That's something I feel like. And so I've gathered up some experiences that make me sort of like stand solid. I'm not wandering around and wondering what I'm going to do all the time like I did 30 years ago or 40 years ago. I'm pointed in a very specific direction, and I'm doing things on purpose mostly. Um, but I also hopefully, and this is a big emphasis on hopefully, I have some more time in front of me. And like I'm not like winding it down yet. And that's what I mean by I'm at a tipping point. Like I've done enough to feel like I know how to get more done, if that makes any sense. And that's a really cool place to be because uh, from experience, I recognize moments that mean something as they are happening rather than, hey, that was, like that was really impactful what happened a year ago. Like I kind of feel it happening in real time, which means I can use it in a very different way. Um, so I say all of that to say that I am a chef. I own a restaurant and an event facility. I write menus, I create recipes, and I craft dishes that hopefully celebrate the incredible ingredients that we have at our fingertips here in Virginia. Um, Dishes that I hope reflect honor and gratitude on the people who grew the vegetables or raised the animals or cultured the cheeses, and dishes that I hope make our chefs proud to prepare and our servers proud to put in front of our guests. And of course, I hope that I'm creating dishes that make our guests feel something. So I do that, and I'm decent at it, but those are the things that I do. Who I am is actually what I want to talk to you about by way of this course. Um, who I am and what gives me purpose, the kind of purpose that like makes up my spine from head to toe, that's something else completely. Food allows me to show in a very tangible way who I am. And otherwise, if I didn't have that gateway, people might not know. So here's who I am. One of the first lines that kind of jumped out at me when I was reading the course description, and again the scope of what World on a Plate covers, is that this course is meant to explore how food shapes our identity, our power, and our community. And that's where I walked into this, right? That's what I wanted, that's all I needed to hear. And so I want to start exactly there. And I want to go through how food shaped my identity, how it demonstrated that I have power, and how it literally formed an entire community that now I depend upon. Okay, skip. So my identity. Most chefs that you talk to, if you ask them kind of why they cook, they're going to tell you that it's because of the stories that they grew up around, like the food that they grew up and the family members and how those memories led them to a path of cooking for a living. And I'm not really any different than that. That's the same thing for me. And that's our identity, right? And that's not for me to try to make this conversation about me. In fact, it's the opposite. I want to try and show you how food can and does impact everyone and how it can be a reflection of us, of our ideals and our history, even though there's differences that exist there in a very significant way, as long as we're just paying attention. So just by way of a little bit of background, um, my parents were divorced. They were married for 20 years. They had 5 kids. I was the fifth. They got divorced soon after I was born. They promised there's no connection there, but they did get divorced soon after I was born. And I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters and me, right? So the divorce meant that my dad lived in another state, and my mom lived in Pennsylvania. My dad lived in Georgia. And so there's a lot of geography between us, right? And that was happening uh, at the beginning of my life. So, kind of as I was becoming who I was going to become, I had a, a fractured kind of family in terms of where we were placed on the planet. But in terms of what our lives were like when we were together, my parents made a really, really concerted effort to make sure that we celebrated these significant touch points together, birthdays, uh, uh, holidays, graduations. We always got together for those things, which was now that I think about it and I know like the logistics behind it, that was tough and it was expensive. And so when we got together, it wasn't about like throwing big parties or going out to dinner or going to Disneyland. It was really about us sitting around a table and cooking together and experiencing what it feels like to be a family together, even though it was taking place in like 4 or 5 day little snippets, right? Excuse me. So there's that. And then my dad was this like very complicated, really highly educated guy. He valued education very highly. He's a mathematician. He worked in computer science. He did that all of his career. He traveled a ton. He was like thirsty for knowledge and for connecting with people. The more the merrier, however different they were, he celebrated that. And so he looked at food and he attacked food like a scientist or like an explorer. He wanted to know what exotic ingredients were and he wanted to put them right in front of us. And I was like, oh my God. But like that's just who he was. My mom, on the other hand, grew up with a lot like a more simple life, and she had some heart issues that pulled her out of high school. So she didn't have a high school diploma. She was kind of on the other end of that education arc, if you will. And she was more about like family and tradition. Those are the things that brought her comfort. And so my mom cooked in a way that she used the foods that she cooked to tell stories of love and tradition and stability and family. Um, and those two kind of opposite ways to like go into food are actually what made me me. And so I find myself using both of those things to navigate food even today. So when I create a dish, and I pause to try and share my screen here for a second, so let me not get too clunky with it here. Boop. Okay. Okay, bang. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yep. And does it look crazy? Okay, so let me see here. All right.
Yep.
Okay, so okay, so let me get into presenter mode here. So sorry, guys. Okay, so when I create a dish, I want it to do three things every time. This is my goal. I want it to feel like it's familiar. I think familiarity breeds comfort and it makes us relax. And I personally hate when I scan a menu and I'm like, what is this and what is that and where does it come from? And I don't understand it. It kind of makes me put my guard up. So I want to take all of that away. I want there to be a certain sense of familiarity about it. And that to me is how I reflect on my mom and the things that she brought to me. The second thing that I want a dish to do is I want there to be something a little bit unexpected about it, right? So if it's a grilled cheese sandwich, it's not just, two pieces of bread with a piece of cheese in the middle. We might prepare it differently. We might use a different kind of cheese. We might have half of it cold or have a fruit element, something just a little bit different. And that to me is an homage to my dad, which is kind of never stop looking, never stop discovering, never stop finding something to excite you. And then the third thing I think that I want every dish to do is to reveal something, to tell a story. That's what food does. Okay, did I stop sharing there? Yeah. Okay, sweet, perfect. That's what I wanted to do. So in doing that, that is a way for me to sort of reflect on my identity. I want to go back real quick to this. I want to show you something else real quick. Do this one more time. Share, boom, here, this. So I'm going to take this dish that we have on our menu today, right now. You see that? Yeah. Okay. Oops. Okay. We have something on our menu, grilled Calabrian chicken. It's got peach blackberry barbecue sauce, sweet potato salad, watercress, and cilantro oil. So if you sit down and you pick up the menu and you look at that, I think what I hope stands out to you is that it's just grilled barbecue chicken and potato salad. That to me should be like, okay, like whatever all the other fancy stuff sounds like when I look at it on the menu, at the end of the day, it's sometimes barbecue chicken, it's potato salad. I'm gonna go ahead and order that. So that's the part to me that feels familiar. The part that maybe is just a little bit different is instead of it just being like potato salad, with mayonnaise and celery and herbs, it's sweet potato salad, and it's just roasted sweet potatoes that are served cold, and they're tossed with wild greens and olives and fennel, and that is like I think what's a little bit unexpected when it's put down in front of you. And the storytelling part of it is that it's summertime, and I want you to look at that, and I want you to see grilled chicken, and that happens in the summertime, and I want you to see peaches and blackberry sauce, barbecue sauce, and that should say summer. I also want you to know that I love southern regions, all of them, not just the southern part of the United States, but I like the southern part of Italy. I like Mexico. I like all of the things that the Southern culture exemplifies: utilization, necessity, working together, storing, using later. All of those things to me are indicative of Southern cultures. And then the way that we appropriated like this wonderful Asian ingredient, cilantro, into Latin American culture, Tex-Mex culture, which is a huge part of where I wound up in California. And so I had a lot of like Tex-Mex food. Those things are all homages to to my experiences. And so that's the story that it tells. And that's what I want that dish to do. So when you think grilled chicken and potato salad, and you think you're comfortable, and what you get is something that feels a little bit different and a little bit wild and a little bit left of center. That's if I've done that when I create a dish, then I feel like I've shown you part of my identity through food, and that's what I tried to do. And a second here, pop out. Okay. All right. So, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not as smooth as a whole mountain stream here. So, what all that does to me, what it all means is that that is my sense of identity. It means that who I am and how I choose to identify is I am someone who wants to celebrate who my parents were to me, someone who wants to share these incredibly impactful lessons that they taught me, who they raised me to be, whether it was about tradition and family and love and simplicity, or whether it's about being wild and brave and exploring and connecting to people that you may not otherwise think you have connections with. Those are the things that I want to share. They are who I am. They're the jumping point for everything that I do, who I call my friends, who I love, and certainly what I do for a living. So that's my interpretation of food as an identifier, as an identity. Okay, so now the second part of this course is exploring how food how food shaped my power. Let me tell you when I felt when I first felt kind of how much power I have as a chef and as a restaurateur, and how that relates to food. And like you heard in the intro, I've been doing this for 15 years. So the when that light turned on for me was actually at the jump of the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, some context. I think it might be important here to say that I chose not to have children. It's a very conscious decision on my part, and it's just simply because like I have a big, like a soft heart, and I can't take it. Like I can't, I watch my brothers and sisters raise their kids, and it's like, oh my God, it's just like thing after thing after thing. And I know there's a part of me that would literally never sleep or relax again if I had kids because I worried about every minute of every day of their lives. And I'm sure I'd raise them to be wearing like helmets and walking around in a bubble with a hazmat suit on because I just wouldn't want anything to hurt them. I'm a pretty solid aunt, but I would not be a great parent, and I'm cool with that. And I'm only telling you that because it has a tendency to sort of reposition the role that work has, specifically owning a business, that it has for me in my world. In some part, it's the way that I'm going to say whatever I'm on this earth to say is like kind of through the work that I do. Uh, your parents, my parents, they express themselves through their kids. Your parents probably did the same thing. And in some ways, I express myself through this business that I've built, and how I intersect with the lives of the people that I serve and the people who work with me is kind of my imprint. Um, but it's what I hope is going to resonate like even after I'm gone, at least for a little while. So anyway, you were all here when the pandemic struck, and it was insane, right? We had no idea what was happening, how long it was going to last, how we'd come out of it, or even if we'd come out of it. And there's like this thing that was unfolding in real time, like we didn't know where to put it because we had zero context for it. But also at that period of time in 2019 and 2020, there was also something else very significant going on in the world of food. And it was that the dark side of the hierarchy and kitchen culture was getting exposed. Okay. Overnight, restaurants, for example, went from being a place where you connected and you felt safe and you could celebrate to being a place of fear, not just because of the pandemic, but also because these like massive chefs who had these huge empires built around food were starting to topple because the curtain was being drawn back about the toxicity that they were creating in in kitchens. Okay. Um, Hang on a second. She stops to share her screen. There we go. Okay. So big deal. So like it was kind of like the Me Too movement was going on globally. At the same, I mean, it had been going on for years, but it was really heightening in terms of like women having their voice in the workplace in 2019, 2020. Um, Mario Batali fell, John Besh fell, Mike Isabella, April Bloomfield, all of these chefs who had again like built these empires on food and their role as like this, they're celebrity chefs. They were all starting to come down for things like sexual harassment, bullying, creating an environment of burnout, having a boys' club that ruled, debauchery, alcohol, drugs. It was like all of that stuff was happening at the same time as the COVID-19 pandemic hit the planet, and our industry was broken apart in a day, literally just like shattered in a day. So, like I said, not only were we outside of it, we didn't know when we were coming back to normal. We also had no idea what normal was going to be. Okay, so there was a global health crisis. There was displacement of the hospitality workforce, and that's like 17 million people that kind of categorize themselves as working in hospitality. And there was the role specifically of women in kitchens. And the intersector of all of those three things is food, at least is what it was for me. And that's the point where I was coming to into this period of time that was kind of faced with so much question. Okay, hang on a second here. So okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Um, so yeah, I just want to get back to where I am. So uh it was at that moment, I think, that it was when everything kind of disappeared in a second, and I was faced with, okay, like, what am I doing? Am I closing my restaurant? Am I going to be able to reopen my restaurant? What happens to my entire workforce? And that question, like, just just like weighed down on me so heavy. It was like in one instance that light turned on and it showed me the actual people that were like, I knew they were standing next to me the whole time, but like I didn't know their lives. I didn't know that some of them were living literally paycheck to paycheck. I didn't know that some of them had no other options for income other than showing up and going to work with us every day. I didn't know that they didn't have backup plans or savings accounts, or that like they pay their rent on the first to get them to the 31st. And then if they don't have steady income coming in, they can't pay for the next first to the 31st. So like they could literally be out of a home in a couple of weeks. And right then I was like, okay, I don't have the option of not having an answer. Rebuilding became not just a necessity, but an opportunity to look at the things that I felt like were kind of tainting the food industry and do it better. Um, it made me realize that I had the power through food and through what I do for a living to do it better. And that's where I started to make a change. Um, Food is obviously an equalizer, right? Through food, I have an opportunity to really show how many people are needed in order to get a plate of food in front of us, how far that timeline stretches back to the growers and the truck drivers that bring it to us, and the prep chefs and the dishwashers and the sanitation workers, and everything that happens before a plate of food is actually placed down in front of you. So putting a light on that final product, what I had seen before then is kind of like the rise of the celebrity chef and like the pushing to the forefront of the person who's standing there in a chef coat, like chopping something gorgeous and putting it in front of you. That's where all of the accolades went. But COVID helped me see that really like step aside just to for a little bit, and what you see behind that celebrity chef are people that may be um, incredibly income sensitive. They might be facing issues at home that like they take 3 buses to get to work. You know what I'm saying? Like they have these plights that kind of weigh them down that we have no idea about, and they're just as much as a part of the final product as we are. And so that put the power in my hand, I think, as I rebuilt after COVID, as we rebuilt after COVID, to take myself out of the center, where I think people were naturally trying to push chefs at that time, and instead put us all at the same point, and to take the people that I felt like are the most important in this journey, out of the darkness and put them in a light so that we could all see them and hopefully make a difference in their lives. I think that's a powerful thing to be able to redirect the the force and the potential good that comes with food, and I can do that. And so that to me is when I realized power through food, and that's how I choose to use that power. To share it so that the people that are really, really doing the work while I'm doing this webinar with you guys, the ones who are like actually over in the restaurant, busting tail to get it done, those are the ones that we're paying attention to. Um, so that's my power. I also want to say this one very quick story about animal husbandry as power through food. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Um, and I just want to tell you a really quick story. The first time that I ever saw an animal be slaughtered for food was like uh, almost like this, almost like this holy religious experience, right? Very small group of people, and we learned about the the art or the craft of husbandry, about what it means to slaughter an animal and the way that it should be done. And it was completely quiet. And it was a bunch of chefs at a farm in Vermont. And we knew it was a lamb, and we knew the lamb's name, we were told. And, again, very quiet. And they slaughtered the lamb. This gentleman slaughtered the lamb, and we watched. And then later, it wasn't that particular lamb, but it was another lamb that we were given to prepare, and we had this huge meal with about 50 people. And like I said, there's a bunch of chefs there, maybe 10 of us, and all the servers and the staff who worked at the farm. And as we're putting together this dinner and we're cooking, the chefs are like, we're doing our chef thing, and we're like taking pictures, and we're doing, and I'm looking over and I'm looking at the people who are the staff there at the farm, and they were visibly like mourning um this lamb that they had lost that day, because they knew that lamb, like they fed it, and they understood the full circle and everything, but like uh to see that was like it made me connect with the animal, not just as food, but as another thing. And like when we got the portions of the lamb that we were using, they were warm, not cold, which is when we get delivered meat at the restaurant on the truck, it has to be cold. It's got to be 40 degrees or below. Can't use it. It's food safe. That's a Virginia law. And so like I realized that the people that are working with me, these chefs who are like 20, 30 years old, they only touch meat that's ice cold, and they only see it packaged in food safe containers or in plastic, and it comes out of a case that's perfectly measured out. They don't see all the things that I saw, and they don't feel all the things that I feel. And there's a world of disconnect between the animal and the dish for them. For me, though, there's not a world of disconnect. It's now very closely linked. And I think that there's power in that, in seeing that. And that power translates not just through the food that I serve, but also through the relationships that I have. And so when I look at someone at the restaurant and I see them, if they're on my staff, for example, I'm not just looking at what's in front of me, I'm also uh, trying to be sensitive to the story that got them there. because I think that's the way that we pay honor to them. Just like the story that got whatever that lamb chop is on the plate, it started with a bunch of people in a circle, very quiet, thanking the animal for sacrificing its life. Okay. Okay. All right, so here we are at the last point, which is how food shaped and continues to shape my sense of community. This is a super easy one. There's this sort of adage, or an observation about Black people, and I think it comes from Frederick Douglass, maybe, originally, perhaps, when he said something like that he sings to drown his sorrows, not to show his happiness. In other words, when Black people are in pain, we sing. We sing at funerals and we sing during marches or vigils. We use song to bring us up from a place of deep pain. That's just kind of sort of a thing. Anyway, um, Black people, many people, I'm sure, use food to do the same thing. We create these big, bountiful spreads as celebrations of life, and they look exactly like the spreads that we create at the birth of a baby or for a wedding. Same foods, but different emotions. And these places where we know that things are happening, things that actually matter, food is always there. And it's like I said, like I've lived enough years to know that, like, when I'm watching someone graduate from college, or I'm watching someone take a vow to share their life with someone else, or I'm watching someone bury somebody that they love, I know in that moment, uh, even if they don't really know how it's going to impact them for years to come, I know that it is because I've already felt it before, right? So like that's just such a cool place to be in, where you can reflect and be at the same time. Um, my business partner always says, I love catering funerals. And if you don't know what that means, it sounds kind of weird, but she's my very best friend. And so she also happens to have been there the day that my dad passed away. And in a huge surprise to me, I'd never expected this. My dad only specified one thing. First of all, he thought he was going to live forever, so he didn't really take care of things like the way he should have. But what he specified was he wanted me to handle everything about the burial. And I'm like, what? And I'm talking everything, like picking out all the gross, picking up the casket and the headstone and everything. I planned every single beat of that day. And my friend was right there with me as I did that. And I can tell you right now, I don't remember a single bit of it. Like, I don't remember what we ate then. I don't remember what color was in the lining of, like, I don't remember any of those things because I was in a fog. And so what Beth means when she says I love catering funerals is she loves being the person who guides someone through that fog. She likes to take care of them when they can't care of themselves through food. Um, when people are suffering a loss like that and we're asked to provide the food, we know that we're stepping into a place where we're going to be completely invisible, that we don't matter to them, right? That we're just providing, and that we're supposed to fade after that right into the background. And they'll probably never hear from us again, and we from them. Uh, and we're almost also like involved in their sad memory, which is not a great place to be. But we also are connected to them in a really meaningful way, just like we're connected to them when we cater their wedding, or when we provide food when their kid graduates from college, or when their daughter has a daughter, or when they win an election or celebrate a 50th anniversary, whatever. It doesn't always have to be bad. It could be good too. Um, I got to know this woman really well. Um, she was like in her 40s, I think, when I first opened up when I first opened my first restaurant. And she used to come in like every 2 weeks or so, but she'd always sit at the same table. She'd always order the same thing. And I didn't know her, but what I learned to realize is that every time she came in, she was coming out like later in life. She had been married, she had 2 kids, she was living like this life. And then she realized she actually should be on a different path, living a different life. And so she was telling people one at a time, you know, her sister-in-law, her best friend at the school where she worked. I don't know if she worked at a school. One of the parents from her, PTA group, whatever. She was taking them out to lunch and she was explaining her story and she was coming out to them. And she was doing that in our restaurant every time. And sometimes it was pleasant and sometimes it wasn't. And sometimes there were hugs and sometimes there were tears. But that put her in front of me in a way that I otherwise never would have been. And ultimately, we became friends after that. And it was pretty cool. So, food is the backdrop of all of those memories. And as they're taking place, good and bad, joyful and sad. And it's being with one another through these moments that I think makes us a community. At least that's what community means for me. I'm allowed to witness sometimes these really significant moments in the lives of my neighbors and community members only because I get to bring the food. And it binds me to the people that I know and to the people that I don't know. And I spent 15 years in service to this community here in Fredericksburg, and that's only added to my purpose. It's what drove me to run for city council, and it's what shapes me. Food has shaped my sense of community by giving me entrance into the lives of strangers during their most significant moments. And that connection is, to me, the literal definition of community. I want to share something with you guys really quickly. Hopefully this will work. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to full screen it. Boom. And then I'm going to go back and share my screen. And this is going to give you, I hope, a little bit as I wind this down, more of a picture of who I am and what food means to me and how I think it celebrates everybody else. So let me go ahead and rock this out here for a little bit. Oh, share, boop, share, bang. There we go. And tight, don't go away. Boop. Okay. And okay. I think that my passion for food snuck up on me. It was always such a part of my life growing up with my family. All of our memories and our most important moments seem to happen around food and around meals. So that was kind of ingrained in me. It wasn't until my dad passed away that I thought about the concept of doing what you love for a living. I realized, well, this thing that I love, I should try and do it all day. I think that I opened a restaurant in a really kind of like dynamic time in terms of what it means to be a chef. In Fredericksburg, I really feel like there's not as many barriers between the people who are living in this community and enjoying your product and the people who are producing the product itself. This is a community that really links on each other. We choose to spend as many hours here as we can making this community strong. I can see it, so I know it's true. Being on Top Chef showed me that cooking is a team sport. We're only there to help each other. And without doing that every single day, we're not going to get through service and we're not going to get the best food out in front of you that we need to get out there. So it's not a job that's meant for one person. Memories and like little bursts of joy are what we're trying to achieve with the experience that is Foodie. I hope that the whole experience plays in there, and then the food is another component. And by no means do I think it's the most important thing that we do. It's just one of the things that we do. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Done.
Right.
That's it. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much
Thank you very much.
for for your for your insights, for your openness. It was very interesting and very touching. Um, we are open for questions. So usually it takes like a minute or two before the first questions are coming in. Um, Maybe let me start with one, picking up on your work for the James Beard Foundation, about, what did I say, about chef advocacy. What do you do in that role?
Yeah. Um, so around 2016, I was introduced to a program through James Beard called the Chef's Boot Camp for Advocacy and Change. And uh, again, there was this movement where chefs were sort of being pushed into the limelight, and Instagram and pictures, and everybody was like, it was like very kind of cool to be a chef, and there was like a celebrity was being attached to that word chef,
Mm.
which was kind of newish. And so not that new, but newish. And so James Beard was trying to capitalize off of that by saying, hey, if people are paying attention to what chefs are saying, let's get them to say something important. Let's get them to talk about food. Let's get them to talk about food waste. Let's get them to talk about climate change, yeah, about localities. So in order to achieve that, they designed these boot camps where they would grab chefs from all over the country in these small intimate groups, about 12 of us, and they would take us to an offsite location. In my case, it was a farm in Vermont, and we stayed there for like 4 or 5 days, and it was intense. We just did intense workshops, and we listened to speakers. And basically, they were trying to spark a fire in us and make us connect to something meaningful, so that then they could teach us how to use our voice to advocate for that. And the things that I connected with were the reduction of food waste, and trying to mitigate hunger in schools for kids. And so since that boot camp, I've worked with James Beard quite closely on many issues, like speaking in Capitol Hill for Points on the Farm bill, fighting for SNAP benefits, working with No Kid Hungry. It's just like not really knowing how you could use your voice, and then someone teaching you, and so then you just do it.
Okay, so here we have the first question. If you want to read along, you can just click on that Q&A
Okay.
box on the bottom, then you can read along. Otherwise, I read it out loud because otherwise I think the others
Okay.
uh, might not follow it as closely. Were you aware of the history of the building which would house your restaurant when you were opening Foodie? And did that factor in your choosing that building? I'm talking about the stories of Abraham Lincoln standing on the front steps and the enslaved young man John Washington living and working in the building.
The question
Did
is,
it?
did it affect my choice to
Yes.
kind of like, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100,000%. Yes, definitely.
Mhm.
First of all, for like a very logistic reason, um, uh, in business partnership, I think it makes sense to connect yourself to somebody who counterbalances whatever your skill sets are. So while I knew how to do the restaurant thing, I had no idea how to purchase a building, rehab the building, and do all of that stuff. So that was the first time that Beth and I, as business partners, took on another partner. So um, we still own the restaurant exclusively, but we own the building. Beth and I own half of it, and our business partner, Mike Adams, owns the other half, and he's a contractor. And so he knew how to do the historic renovation perfectly from start to finish, which is great because I had no idea how to do anything like that, and it probably would have cost me 9 times as much. So he did it incredibly well and incredibly respectfully. In the process, I obviously knew that I knew that the building was what it was, which is one of the longest standing banks in in the country, and I knew that Jefferson Davis had spoken on one set of steps, and Abraham Lincoln spoke on the other. And I knew that John Washington was a slave there, had lived there as a slave. What I didn't know was I read the book, which is a book which was published in the 90s of his memoirs that they found there, and that he had self-emancipated. And I read this passage from the book, and it talked about him looking out one of the windows and seeing these cherry blossoms, these cherry trees all over the groves in front of him, right here in Fredericksburg, and not being allowed to go outside to play, not being allowed to mingle with the other kids that were out there because he was black and he was a slave and he was not to stay in there, and that was incredibly impactful for us. So uh, we had those words like kind of formed into this portrait that hangs over what we think is a place of honor, a fireplace in the back of Foodie. Those are his words. But also, as a Black woman, that that trajectory to start as someone who's not allowed to leave because you're enslaved, and to be at a place where I own the building now, um, is everything.
Okay, thank you. There is another question, though. Thank you so much for this soulful and inspiring talk, exposing us to so many different aspects of you and the love you have for food. No question, just the next time I'm at Fredericksburg, we'll be becoming foodie. Okay, good. And then we have one more.
Thank
What
you.
what strategies does Foodie use to reduce food waste in the kitchen and dining room? So, as a context, we just had a presentation on food waste last Thursday. That was the last speaker. So that probably still lingers with some
Sure.
of our audience. Yeah.
Sure. Um, I think that full utilization is fun, like it's a challenge, and it's also a responsibility. So whether it's a plant or an animal or vegetable, or fruit, whatever, using it fully is one of the things that we are committed to doing, and we do not always succeed, but we try. So when it's summertime and I've got tomatoes, you're seeing those things all over the menu. You're like, oh my God. And we've got, fresh sliced tomatoes on a sandwich, and we've got chunks of tomato on a dinner dish, and we've roasted off the butts and the ends, and we've made like crushed tomato sauce, and we're swirling some of it into ketchup, and we're using some fresh in chow chow. Like that to me is what is going to keep you from uh throwing it in the garbage. So you do the same thing with the chicken. You use the parts that you need, and the other parts get turned into stock. That's kind of our challenge, and we try to commit to that. And then also, we are very proud to serve ugly food. Like, I don't care if it's not a perfect carrot, and I don't care if it still has some of the blemishes and the skins on it. I think it was grown and it was pulled, and there's no reason why it needs to go in a pile just because it's not good enough to end up like at the beautiful display at Wegmans. I think we should celebrate ugly food because it's just as delicious, and too many people need it to throw it away.
It's interesting because you were actually referred to anonymously on Thursday as one restaurant in Fredericksburg that is using ugly foods. So, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
Professor,
it's great.
You've
Professor,
outed yourself, right? Now
yeah,
we know.
and now we know which that restaurant, what restaurant it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, and then another question: Do you no? Your story of watching the lamb being slaughtered touched me. Any thoughts on opening a vegan or vegetarian restaurant?
Um, okay, so that's where the practical joy comes in. I'm like, no. But my business partner she calls herself a struggling vegan, right? Like if you float a piece of pizza in front of her face, she's like, oh my God, I'll take that. And she likes to have cream in her coffee. But in general, she's probably 95% vegan. And the reason why she cites as being vegan I'm sure most vegans have a very personal story that connect to it, but she had a dog who was her best friend, and the dog died, and she was devastated. And I remember I'm an idiot, so I was like, "Let's have hot dogs for dinner." And so I was, and she was like, that didn't work for her. She's like, obviously a hot dog is not a dog, but it was a dog, and so and that moment, almost 20 years ago, she stopped eating meat because to her it was like that is something that someone could have loved. And so but the reality of it is that if I have 10 things on my menu, the vegan option is probably going to be the least um chosen, profitable,
Mm.
right? So like, no, I don't think about opening a vegan restaurant. However, I do uh my relationship with a vegan ha as a business partner has given me permission to decenter um animal-based proteins on the plate. And I'm very proud to do that. So I don't mind having bacon be a garnish or so that it can easily be eliminated. And I love when someone comes in and says, I'm a vegan and I want something hot, or I'm a vegan and I want something chilled and refreshing. Not just which of these dishes that are in front of me can you make vegan, but like, what can you make me that's yummy and vegan right now? Love that. Come in and do it. And we'll do it all the time, every time.
Oh, great. Okay, then there is a question for, do you share a narrative about your menu items at Foodie? Maybe a starter for discussion by the customers as they enjoy the food. I could imagine a few sentences along the lines of what you described here, particularly the story.
Oh, you mean do I print that on the menu? Is that what that means?
Uh,
Like, is
Maybe.
that part of the menu description?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Um, yeah, practical joy, no, because it's, real estate on the menu. But what I do is I sort of tell the truth about how, like, for example, we have something on the menu called well, one of our more popular dishes is like Rosie's fried chicken. And so that can obviously lead to the question of who's Rosie. Rosie was my mom. And then that should engage the server or give the server permission to talk to you about my mom. Or, we have something called church greens. Church greens are greens that took a really long time to cook because we would put them on at the beginning of Sunday, and then we'd go to church, and Black people go to church for hours, and then you come back and it's like they're super, super, super cooked. And that's what we had like almost every Sunday. And so church greens are on our menu. And so for someone to say, what are church greens? It allows the server an opportunity to explain why that's called that. So those are how we try to create opportunities and moments for the server to connect to the person that they're helping.
Oh,
Does
okay.
that mean that those stories are part of the server? I'm sorry, I'm following up to
No,
Becky's
it's okay.
question. Does that mean it's part of the server training? So there's the practical side, but also
Yes.
this kind of
Yes. So
narrative.
when we introduce a dish, whether it has a specific personal connection to me or not, we try to share with the server a way that they can relate to it and allow other people to connect to it. But yeah, so if I put church screens in front of the server and say this is our new dish, I tell them what that means and why. We have something called Bocce's pickles. Bocce's my grandmother, and she would have pickled me if she could catch me. Like, she pickled everything. So to put Bocce's pickles on there is just kind of like all of our pickles are Bocce's pickles. And that should allow them an opportunity to say that.
Okay, then there is a question by Mark Give. In light of recent issues with contaminated food, how can we as consumers work to ensure clean and reliable source of food? How do restaurants handle obtaining a reliable food supply?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, so the Virginia Department of Health is very strict and clear about where you can source your food. And when restaurants are visited by the health department, it's usually like, oh my God, and everybody scatters and like, where's my gloves and this and that. I think getting visited by the health department is I'm gonna hesitate to say this because I don't know if show up tomorrow, but I think getting visited by the health department is like, dude, yes, take a look. Let's see what we're doing. Let's show the people that maybe I didn't know something, um, why they can't handle something a certain way, or why they can't leave something out, or what cross-contamination really is. Like you try to, I I try to know and teach, and all of our chefs that are there try to do the same thing, but you miss something. So uh how do we know that what we're serving is good? Because the health department demands that we do. And so we only use sources for our food that follow those stringent rules, so that we know that when we're getting it, it's a certain temperature, it traveled here in a certain way, and that's just the way that that is. And when I get food from the farmers market, which I do all the time, uh, I actually like physically go get it and I bring it to the restaurant, so I know how it entered in, and then I follow the rules. I'll wash it, and it gets labeled in a very certain way, so that we know that um, it's different from maybe some of the commodity oranges or whatever that we got. So like we just so I think the answer is, number one, we have our checkpoints, we follow them very strictly. But number two, as a consumer, you have to do your homework, and you have to know that there's a difference between eating at a roadside stand, which I love, and eating at a restaurant. And so just pick and choose your battles, because yeah,
Okay, great.
I love
Okay.
roadside stands. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have one. We've been talking a lot about, particularly early on in the course, we did a lot of reading about authenticity and what makes cuisines authentic, and is there a sort of a point past which you cannot go to consider something authentic? And you talked about appropriating, I think you said, Asian ingredients into Tex-Mex recipes, and it sounds to me like, I guess I'm asking the question, is authenticity something you think about, or is that not really factor in? It's more of a personal, it's more about identity and personal history and trying to create sort of an experience more than worrying about, is this authentically Tex-Mex if I add cilantro to it or what have you?
That's a great question. I think I think I've probably gone in and out of feeling obligated to do things a certain way. Like, we're a Southern restaurant, or, we're in Virginia, and so we have to do it like this. Sometimes I feel very committed to that. And then sometimes I feel like, well, God, how can you love anything for 15 years and it not change? Like, if you love a person for 15 years, the challenge is to love all the people that they are all 15 of those years, even though there might be a million variations of them. So I'm the same way. And sometimes I'm super into naughty food, and sometimes I'm really into like fresh food. And for a while there, I thought like Asian influence was like really speaking to me, and I love being able to um, share those times and as they come and go in my own life on the menu. And I hope that that doesn't mean that I'm being inauthentic. I think it just means that I'm changing, and I'm sharing those changes with the people that are coming in to eat. And then I try and like have like I'm always going to be who I am. I'm always going to want to have full utilization, or think a tomato is just like, to me, it's precious. It's like I gather it like money. Give it, give me, and I can never have enough. And don't throw any of it away, because when it's November, I'm the knucklehead who's pulling out the marinara from the freezer, and I'm like, haha, I have it. So I'm always going to be that. So whether I'm using Asian influence or African or any other things that I might be interested in that moment, I'm always filtering it through me and through the things that the people that I love. So then it should be authentic. It should be.
Yeah, so we have a question for understanding in the chat. So what is naughty
Oh,
food?
naughty food. Naughty food is like okay, so we've had a black bean burger on our menu since day one. And the reason why we have black bean burger on our menu is because Beth is, at that time, was a vegetarian. Now, she's closer to vegan. But as a vegetarian, she was like, I was like, I need to have a burger when I go to a restaurant. Like that to me, that's like the benchmark. What's your burger like, man? Like, let me taste that thing. Let me see it. Let me taste it. And I always order a burger no matter where we are, at least that with something else. And that's like, well, I want a burger too, but every time I get a burger, it's a freaking black bean patty on a whole wheat bun with a slice of avocado, like, no. She's like, I want a naughty thing too. I want cheese and I want mayonnaise. And so we created this black bean burger, and it's got pimento cheese on it, and it's got, Duke's mayonnaise with cilantro, and it's got a brioche roll, and it's naughty. It's to me, it's like, it's the stuff you can't eat every day, but you want to eat every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have another one if no one else has questions. So you mentioned the experience of shifting your focus from during the pandemic from sort of the out front chefs to those busting tail back in the kitchen, right? And I'm wondering how you get how and or if you think it's important to get other people to make that shift too, right? To change the perspective.
Yes, I definitely do. And by the way, I always want to be back in the kitchen. I rarely want to be um up front, not because I'm shy or anything, but because like that's just the way that I express myself is by working with the team and putting it out. And that's why I did so terribly on Top Chef, because I don't like to be, I'm just not that's not I'm not good at like that thing up front. But do I think other people should do it? Yes, because it's just, I don't know. You know how when you go to the doctors, you get to see the doctor for 5 minutes, but everything else up to that, right, is like the receptionist who makes sure all that your insurance is right, and you go in, you get weighed by somebody else, and then somebody else might take your blood and do an extra, and all this stuff, and they get all your history and click, 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 and then you've been there for 40 minutes, and then you see the doctor, and it's like, okay, well, awesome, I love that, but it doesn't mean that everything else before that didn't matter. And they probably know freaking almost as much anyway, right? Not as much, but they probably know almost as much anyway. And that's the way I feel. It's like, I can't do what I do. I mean, we could serve dinner for 20 minutes before we would be out of dishes unless there was someone there standing there washing them. So why is that not just as important as the person who's grilling the steak? It,
Mhm.
it is. And yes, I think everybody should celebrate that, because if that had more importance, if it had more uh, if it was sexier, they would get paid more. Uh,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be unseen. So yeah, I think it would be lovely if everybody saw that value as equal to the other valuable things in the circle that gets things done.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a question developing here. Kind of, is there something or anything you would define as a classic food of the,
US maybe?
uh,
No.
okay, classic food of Virginia. Okay. What would you
Oh,
consider a classic food of Virginia? A dish.
so Virginia, I love Virginia apples. Love Virginia apples. But I love Virginia. There's some really lovely, mineral rich agriculture soil here in Virginia that produces incredibly distinctly flavored beef. I think it's awesome. There's also, because of the apples, there's like uh, there, well, new sentence. There's a seasonality to like raising pigs, and then it happens in cycles. And then because of the apples in Virginia, if they're raised in a place where they can graze naturally, they gravitate towards the apples that fall from the trees, and they consume those. That makes like this wonderful, and the pork is very distinct here as well. So I love. I'm allergic to seafood, so I don't eat it myself, but there's also wonderful, wonderful seafood that kind of is in Virginia, and is wild caught, that I think is fantastic. So seafood, apples, pork, beef. Those are the things that I gravitate toward here and are distinctly Virginia to me.
How does that work if you are allergic? Is somebody else cooking the seafood, or are you
I
doing
mean,
it
I can
kind of
handle it. I
blind?
can
Okay.
handle it. Yeah, it's not anaphylactic, so I'm not gonna like
Okay.
pass out or anything. It's just something in it is toxic to me. It makes
All right.
me sick to consume it, but I can handle it.
Okay.
Yeah. I just don't have very good instincts about it because I don't experience it. But there's so many people around me that do that they sort of teach me a
Okay.
lot. And I research a lot.
Okay. Great. Okay. Any last questions? Well, if not, then thank you all for coming. Oh, here's one. Okay. How often do you change your menu? Okay.
Oh, it's usually uh, definitely seasonally, and then within each season, probably once or twice we change a lot of it. There's because we've been around for long enough, there's like staples that don't go away. We're almost always going to have the black bean burger. We're going to always have the fried chicken sandwich. So they take up a certain amount of space on our menu and in our lives and in the kitchen. But the other spaces that can rotate, we'll rotate big around the summer, and then we rotate big again in the fall and in the winter and the spring. And then in between there, 2 or 3 changes. So probably somewhere between like 5 and 8 times a year. We change our soup every week, and we change our omelets and like we change those things really frequently. But like a massive change where you'll see the seasons reflected on the menu happens about 5 or 6 times a year.
Okay. And then there's another question. Is it ever scary to try a new dish?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, totally. But Fredericksburg is nothing if not honest with us, and they will be like, "No, thank you." Like they'll tell us it's that we missed the mark, and I'm cool with that. I like thick skin.
Okay.
Yeah, thick skin. I mean, they'll tell us, or my team is like, "Boo, that's a dog. Get it out of there." And like they don't, they don't pull any punches. We don't have time, we're just like, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
So no hurt feelings there. Just pull it off and stick something else on.
Now we asked Danilo Orofino about that too, if there was a dish that flopped that nobody wanted, and he told us about the squid with
Yeah.
the pasta with the squid with the
With the
squid
squid ink.
ink
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
nobody wanted. So,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
that's really authentic. That's
Do you have an
brave.
example for what that you tried that didn't go over well?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's a great question. I think I put like a rustic like vegetable pot pie, and people like literally just like hated it.
Well,
And I
okay.
thought it was a great idea. I was like, this is great. It's gonna be like so homey and like, with puff pastry and everything. No,
No.
yeah, they weren't into.
Okay.
Yeah. Just didn't want to pay for it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, it's try and error. Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. Exactly. So
Okay. Well,
thank you.
thank you so much for taking time. I know during the day you probably would be rather in a restaurant
No worries. No, thank you. It's a
cooking,
pleasure. Thank you
but
for
thank
having
you
me.
very much. I think it was delightful to have you, and good luck with the restaurant in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks, you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, take it easy.
So, thanks. So the
Bye.
students, we meet in a couple minutes with the other link, okay? And for everyone else, I sent out the link where you can find the recordings of these presentations, all of them. And this one will go up later today. Okay, have a good afternoon. Some of you I will see on Friday at Foodies for our lunch at 12. Those who signed up, let's be there on time, 12 o'clock at Foodies. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.